Hello, welcome to our podcast. As always, I am here with Colleen.
Hello.
And we are excited for our guest today, Caroline Youngblood.
Hello, nice to be here.
We are glad to have you here. Caroline is a colleague and student, and we are definitely in community and circle with each other. And so we were super excited to have her on this episode today, where we are talking about, of course, Reiki, but how she actually uses Reiki in her art. She's a fine artist, very accomplished artist. And so we'll be talking a lot about that aspect of that, because we've watched and heard over the years about with her, telling her story and watching her art and all of that, how it has, how Reiki has influenced, I would say, maybe your process, Caroline. So we're really excited to hear about that in greater depth too, because I know that we get to hear bits and snippets and then of course see it. So we're excited to hear a greater depth of that process. So we will go ahead and get started. So Julia, Caroline Youngblood, we will go by Caroline today. She is from Louisiana. She grew up surrounded by cotton fields on Breston Plantation, a historic ancestral home located in Riverton, Louisiana. Went to Louisiana State, where she has her Bachelor's of Fine Arts in drawing and painting with a minor in French language. Graduated Magna cum laude. Youngblood pursued graduate work at Syracuse in New York and received her Master of Fine Arts degree from Louisiana Tech with a concentration in drawing and painting. She also has her RYT, which is registered yoga training, 200-hour from India. And so she's done that. She is also a Holy Fire 3 Karuna Reiki Master, Reiki, Animal Reiki Master, a graduate of our Next Step Reiki training program and our 12 Heavens, and also teaches Reiki in Louisiana. So she has all of that as well. And has been to Mount Karama, has been to the ICRT Center in Hana, Hawaii. So taking classes from Colleen, from William, in amazing places, and taking classes from Colleen and I as well. And then also she teaches watercolor drawing. She teaches art. Right.
But I know there's art. I don't do it anymore. I'm retired.
Oh, okay. She has taught art, I should say, and can teach art. And then her business for her art is J. Caroline Youngblood Fine Art LLC, and then Youngblood Reiki. And then she has her art all over. She's been in galleries, featured in galleries. She has it in hospitals, doctors' offices, waiting rooms, hotels, banks, restaurants. And then her latest is her printed shop. So she has turned her paintings into wearable things. She's wearing one of her hoodies today, super cute, pillows, things like that. Kitchenware, all of those kinds of things that you can get in her printed shop. So certainly take a look. You can find her on Facebook at Caroline Youngblood. And then her Instagram is Caroline Youngblood. And then her website is carolineyoungblood.com. So welcome, Caroline. We are so excited to have you here. And let's just go ahead and get into it and start with your story with Reiki. What drew you to Reiki? How did you start with that? But also, if there's anything to throw in there about painting, like have you always been a talented artist? And knew, that you wanted to be an artist and things like that also.
All righty.
Start at the beginning.
Yeah. So I didn't find Reiki until I think it was about 11 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. I would just happen to be at my brother's house, and one of his friends came in, and I had a really bad headache, and she told me she could do Reiki around my head. And I really didn't know what she was doing, but you know how it is when you have a headache, you'll really try anything. And then from after that, my next experience was, I was like at an Episcopal women's retreat, and one of the priests there was doing like these little 15-minute Reiki sessions. And so I went and did that and ended up buying her book, which was written from not really a perspective that is authentic with me now, but it was a great way to get started, to hear how an Episcopal priest was led to becoming a Reiki master. And then I didn't really get my attunements until the very first part of 2017. And then I started working with William in 2018, then y'all in 2019. And it just kind of went from there. Now, the whole thing with art was, I don't really think in art, I just loved to draw when I was little. And I think most kids are that way, where they love to draw. And, but I did so many things. I did theater, I did ballet, I played the piano, you know, just all these things. And for some reason, the visual art part just wasn't encouraged in my upbringing as much as the other aspects, you know, other talents I had or other classes I took. But I did have several teachers along the way. Like my 5th grade teacher was really helped me to learn how to incorporate like that visual part of the way I think into different subjects that we were doing in class, which was neat. But then by the time I got to high school, I wasn't really encouraged to do art at all, especially the visual part. I had teachers that didn't allow me to draw in class. I would always like to doodle when I was in class because it helped me to be able to pay attention. You know, like looking at the teacher, I would space out, but if I could just doodle on my paper, then I could listen to what they were saying and I could understand it better. But so like when I was becoming a young adult, the idea of like going to college and learning about art or studying about art, that like wasn't even an option to me, because that really hadn't been something that I associated with school, if that makes any sense. Like, you don't go to school and draw. You don't go to school and like spend all this time learning about art. You learn about math, you learn about science, you know, all those things. And then especially like my other gifts and talents that I've uncovered now, you know, different abilities we've learned through our clear senses, different you know, foresight about things or guidance about things. That was absolutely not a part of the picture. And so as I got to be an older adult, my basic creative outlets were music, which was very encouraged in my family and in my school. I played 2 different instruments, and I also did dancing, and that was encouraged in school. That was encouraged at home for some reason. But by the time I got to my senior year in high school, I was in a really bad car accident, and my grandmother was taking us to school, and we have to cross railroad tracks every day to get to the main highway. But this day it was like really foggy, and there was a train coming that didn't blow its horn. So we were our car was hit on the side by a train that was going 70 miles an hour. And my grandmother was killed instantly, who was driving. And then I ended up getting a traumatic brain injury, and I have like a severed nerve on this side of my head right here where I had a fractured skull. So with that happening, I have a nerve deafness in my left ear, and then I have partial hearing loss in my other ear, which completely affected my ability to dance and to play music. So here's all these talents that I've developed, and this one thing kind of like pushes me off and says, gosh, it's not that I don't really want to do those things anymore, but no, I don't really want to do those things anymore. I don't want to play a musical instrument if I can't hear the same way. And I don't want to dance if I don't have the balance or the coordination that I did before. So, um, it was at that time, that was probably 4 months before I went to go to college, 5 months before college, I had that happen. So it really switched my perspective on like what I wanted to do with my life, how I wanted to develop my talents, and um the whole thing with having a near death experience, Robin, I know you've had something similar happen to before, can really shift your perspective on pretty much everything. And even though I don't really have a conscious awareness of, or let's say a visual remembrance of what transpired during that, I definitely came back with a different state of consciousness and a different state of like thinking like from day to day, am I doing what I want to be doing? Am I learning what I want to be learning? Am I getting to be me? Because it just shifts your perspective on, maybe certain goals I would have had before or all of that. So I decided that I was going to go to college pretty close to home because with my grandmother dying, I kind of inherited my grandfather. And so that was my choice. That was my choice to want to look after him and to want to be a companion for him while he was still alive. So I ended up going to Louisiana State University, that was 3.5 hours from my home. And my very first semester there, I ended up enrolling in art history class as an elective. And at that time, I didn't know I wanted to be an artist. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I had all kinds of ideas. But once I got into that class and I started looking at the art and hearing the stories about the art and like seeing how it evolved over time, there was something like I really, really deeply connected to about all of that. And the first class I took was actually like prehistoric art up to the Renaissance. So that's like nothing like the style of art I do now. And I don't know why I found it so endlessly fascinating. But I would go home after that class, and when all of my other friends were like going out to eat and going to the bars, I was sitting in my dorm reading this like thick art history book. But I loved learning about the Egyptians. I loved learning about like all of that stuff. And so at first I thought, gosh, well, maybe I can study art history. And that was kind of an idea, but eventually, by the time I was 21, my third year at LSU, I had enough credit hours to get into a studio art class. And when I did that and I took my first class, I finally felt like a peace that I had never really felt before. Because all of my other classes, although I was always a good student, I did well in math, did well in science, all that, it just was not authentic to me. It wasn't what I wanted to be thinking about. It wasn't what I wanted to be learning about. I basically wanted to be living in a daydream all the time. And I can admit it now. I mean, I like being in an altered state of consciousness, and I feel that way if I'm working on art. I feel that way if I'm thinking about art and if I'm traveling, all of these things. So it was like I had these kind of like guiding forces in my mind. And, I'd get to a certain class and I'm like, yeah, I really like what I'm learning here, but man, this class makes me really feel like myself. I feel like I can talk and speak up and have a voice. And so that's how I got started taking the art classes. But I had never done painting before. I'd always done drawing. And the drawing I had done was with a Sharpie. Like that was my drawing tool before. Those real fine tip Sharpies. That's how I would do like little cartoons I'd make up, different animals, cartoons. And so they were actually going to teach me how to draw using different materials that I never used before, and also drawing from observation, which means like you're looking at something, you're like meditating on an object, meditating on an image, and then you're basically creating this three-dimensional fantasy on like a two-dimensional surface. And I thought that was really cool. And I really wanted to spend the rest of my life learning about how to do that because I enjoyed the challenge of it. And I knew it would be something that would just keep me in that state of kind of like a peaceful state that I wanted to be in. Now, my business started around the same time I got to college also. I had always had a kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, even as like a young girl. And I'm saying like maybe even before school age, 4, 5, 6 years old. When my dad would leave us at home and go to work, he'd leave us with me and my two brothers. I'd go in the kitchen and pour a bunch of stuff in a pan and bake it, add chocolate chips to it, bake it, and go sell it on the corner. Like not even using a recipe. And then I started making friendship bracelets and, different things like that. And so that was like my little stand at the end of the street. And so that was my first business. And, maybe I made $1.25, but that was fun to me. So when I got to college, this was before I started taking any of my art classes, living in my first dorm. There's a really big tradition at LSU in Baton Rouge. It's a party school, like one of the huge party schools. And so there is a product called a party cup. And every student would have a party cup that you took to any kind of party, especially the football games that were huge parties. And I thought, gosh, I could really make a superior party cup. So I started a business out of my dorm room. People would bring me their cups. I had like a big set of colorful pens. And that's what I would spend my time doing, like after class and on the weekends, was filling those orders. And when I say a party cup, they're like personalized. Like, you've got the fun letters on the side, then maybe you've got the picture of the tiger, maybe you've got the picture of, whatever other theme it was. So I was getting to use my cartoons and my use of like using Sharpies and pens for drawing. I mean, it was just like a perfect fit for me with that. But the pay isn't very high for painting party cups. You got college students, they don't have a lot of money. So I think I started off charging around $2 to $2.50 per party cup. Yep. And that was the equivalent of making about $4 an hour. Plus, I had to buy my supplies. But at the time, it was just so much fun. And I entered that same state of consciousness painting party cups that I did working on other paintings, thinking about art history, learning about art history. So that became really like, it was like such a big stress relief for me because I could get in there, I'd have all these stacks of cups around, and, I could just spend hours doing that and being in a peaceful place. After, I think my first year, I decided that if I really wanted to get this party cup business going, that I basically needed an agent. So I started working for a store in town, and it was like the official sorority store at LSU. And the lady there would take my orders for me. She sold the cups. I could buy the pens from her. And then all I had to do was deliver the cups. And then at some point I got a paycheck whenever I would ask for it. Now, this was a big milestone for me with my business because I had to get used to asking to get paid. And it was like getting paid for something I enjoyed. And it would cause me so much anxiety to ask for my paycheck. And I don't know where that conditioning came in, but that was very hard for me. And of course, I eventually got over it, but I don't know why I never asked for a raise. Like, who can indefinitely go making $4 an hour? Like, that's not sustainable for even a college student, right? And then when I graduated and I went back and, did a couple of cups a week or whatever for her, someone else had asked for a raise, and all of a sudden, what I was getting paid doubled. But so somebody spoke up and said, hey, we're not making enough. But for some reason, I never had the courage to do that. But eventually, when I graduated from LSU, it was like my very last semester there. I had a restaurant owner come in and approach me about doing some paintings for his Italian restaurant that had like an Italian theme. And then I realized, well, I can actually make some real money doing this. And so I was so excited, and I got out my art history books and started looking for it was an Italian restaurant. So I was going to do like these old Italian paintings but like do them in my style. And that was another big milestone for my business because I got all that work started without even having a contract with this guy. And he ended up really taking advantage of that situation. And I think I ended up getting paid just a fraction of what I needed to get paid. And I ended up repossessing a majority of the paintings I did. Like, he didn't get them. But so those are two like milestones with me and my art business. In between that time, I started taking the painting classes when I think I was about 21. And then I graduated from LSU at 23. So it was just about 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, where I really got to develop skills in drawing and painting. And this was unlike most of my classmates like that I was in school with. Most of them had come from maybe gifted art background in high school, or their parents had taken them to art lessons or bought them art supplies, things like that. So I learned pretty soon in my classes that even though I may have had an unusual talent, that I was really going to have to work a lot harder to like catch up and graduate with these people and kind of be at like some kind of comparative level with them. So I took my education very seriously, and I painted a whole lot. Like, that was what I wanted to do with my time. So, during the day I would go to my classes and use oil paint, use watercolors, use charcoal and things like that. And then I went home and I used the markers. I did the lettering, I did the cartoons, and that was my life then. But by the time I graduated in 2003, I realized that, God, I have just barely gotten started with this, and I want to learn so much more. So in the back of my mind, I thought, I am just going to stay in school as long as I can, learn as much as I can about art, and then I will just figure something out afterwards.
So that's amazing. And then enter Reiki. Reiki enters the chat. A little bit, well, actually a little ways further down the road, because you said you started in about 2018 or 2017. Yeah. So how have you watched kind of Reiki in the beginning influence, or just watched that progression start with Reiki? Because from talking to you, it took a little bit for it to really influence your paintings. And then with this, I know this is a multi-tiered question that I'm sure we'll have tributaries of. But then watching this latest collection, I mean, the colors are like, so they're colors that you kind of see in the journeys that we do together, and yet like they don't necessarily exist here. You know, we talk about those experiences where it's colors that you don't necessarily see, and like that's what I feel from those latest paintings. But let's go back to how that kind of started to influence, once you got your Reiki training, how that started to influence your art.
Well, let me just give you a little bit of background information. Before I did Reiki, and I'm going to say specifically during my years in graduate school, which I stretched out graduate school for 4.5 years. I was in graduate school for 4.5 years. So, everyone, when they look at my paintings, would use the words creepy, eerie, ghostly.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I was always like, hey, I wasn't intending that if that's what you see. But I mean, I look back at it now. I mean, I used gray, black and white. Yeah, it was creepy. The colors were very faded, muted. Every once in a while, I'd have a little bit of color come through. So at that time, I was working with subject matter that, yes, it was creepy. It was eerie. It had to do with my ancestors.
Mm.
And so this connection with my ancestors was actually coming through before I got my first Reiki attunements. And I think it was really just like coming face to face with what people were seeing. And
Did you know that at the time, or was that in retrospect that you knew it was like, now you know, oh, I was channeling through my ancestral history, but you didn't know at the time? Okay.
No, because that was not one of my talents that I would have accessed because I thought that meant I was crazy.
Mm. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So, but once I started getting my Reiki attunements, I could see like a dramatic shift in my subject matter, in the way I portrayed the subject matter, and in my ability to kind of jump from subject to subject and see it in like a bigger picture instead of seeing it as me just being an image maker, like I was saying I was before, like with my job painting the party cups. Like, no, there's something more here than me just like painting what somebody else is telling me to paint. Like, I'm developing a language, I'm developing a connection with something that is beyond anything that I could have read in an art history book. So,
So that started with when you got Reiki originally, that kind of started to happen more and more. Okay.
the first way it came through was with this symbol that I have on my jacket right now, which is the
Okay.
magnolia. And I started to see a magnolia so much more as like a lotus flower.
Mm.
So my first paintings, when I remember when I finished my Reiki 1 and 2, I actually was drawing the symbols on the canvas before I painted the flower. And then that didn't really work out because I was like, well, do I hide the symbol? Do I not hide the symbol? And but so this Magnolia series started, and in my mind, it was a symbol of enlightenment, or like the opening of the petals and the light coming in. And I stayed with that for a while, and those became very popular because I was still running a business where I was selling painted things. It was just now selling these big paintings instead of selling like a small disposable cup, right? So those became really popular. And when something's popular and you have a business, like you restock your inventory. When it sells, you restock your inventory. You keep doing what's selling. But then I'll get to a point where I become bored with it, or I become irritated with it, or another idea pops into my mind. So from there, I did start using a lot more color. And from there, I did start using things that kind of went back into the creepy realm, but did it in a very like nostalgic way, or a way where I had kind of cleaned up that creepiness. But I use the word creepy just to kind of mean duality. There's some kind of duality there. There's some kind of story. Each person can have their own interpretation of that. And I was doing that with painting people. And that's usually when people saw that eerie, creepy aspect of my art, was when I was painting different people. And at that time, I was working very closely with my Reiki teacher in Austin. I would have sessions with her almost once a month. And she was telling me that I was actually channeling the spirits of these people. And I was attracted to, or she helped me understand that. She wasn't telling me. She helped me to understand that. And so I mean, that is something I had been doing all for a long time. I loved old photographs. I loved finding old films. I loved finding old newspapers, old recipes, and touching them the way they felt when I touched them. And then when I painted them, it was like the people would just come to life. And that was when I really kind of felt like what I thought my niche was going to be, was like a cross between like portrait painting and painting. It would be called figurative painting, where you're painting people, but it may not be like a portrait. It could be them like using a snapshot, which was what I preferred to do. I liked finding the old snapshots and just creating a story around it.
Yeah. Interesting. Oh, I see Colleen reaching for the unmute.
Well, I heard you say that it's also your method of communication. And then you're talking about the storytelling part of it. And so I think I just love that expression of it. And, maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, just because I'm not sure that, like, for myself, I had an understanding that that's part of the process and then the expression.
Yeah, so I know in these kind of settings where we're in class together, we're talking, but I don't talk a lot. And I'm not autistic. I'm not anything like that, but I actually prefer being silent most of the day. And I think I've always been that way. I've been very much introverted, in kind of inward thinking. So as a young child, when I would do my images, like I'd draw an image, it always had a story to go along with it. So it was like I was illustrating a book all along. I mean, and this is, I'm saying, with like crayons, when we do things with crayons. And then I also knew from a young age, when I did this thing, I wrote the story about it, I did this visual thing. If I go and hand it to somebody, the look on their face would be like, ah, and they'd be so happy, right? So it was like creating something that I knew would make people happy. And if I gave it to them and they kept it, then that means I had to go make another one. So this is kind of a process that I've been using my whole life. And so I actually think of so I do my paintings in series, in like a series form, kind of like you'd think of a TV show, or like you may think of novels or books or stories. When I go about and I have a theme, there is already a story running in my mind about it. And then I take my language, which is visual, or creating a visual image or using found objects and like pasting them down there and doing it that way. That was my way to tell the story. And the way that I like that better than me writing the story, and you've got to read the story and you've got to look at the images, it was really important to me that my viewers had their own interpretation of the story. That I wasn't telling them, hey, this is supposed to be about something dark and creepy. This is supposed to be about something happy. This is supposed to be about this or that. They can look at it, and so many people tell me now when they look at my paintings, they get chills all over their body. Well, I've done my job. Do you ever look at somebody's photograph and you're just like, oh my God, it just makes your heart like warm, or it just makes you kind of tingle all over? Well, that in general is the reaction that I like people to have from my paintings. And they can take that story whichever way they want with it. But that is my end goal, is that they have some kind of internal dialogue with it, and that I've created this image and I've kind of let go of what that story is. I know what my story is, and if they want to ask me, I'll tell them, but I don't always tell the full story because I want the viewer to have their unique experience with that.
I would say that I experienced that. So Caroline was kind enough to gift Colleen and I a print of some of her paintings, but we got to choose which ones we wanted. And I'm going to grab mine real quick. One second. It's right here.
Well, I'm gonna screen share something now that you're doing that.
Okay. Can you screen share the one that I chose?
Yep.
Okay. So the one that I chose, I would say, there's the original, the paint of it. For those of you that are listening, if you can watch this on YouTube and want to see the paintings, you should. First of all, the scale of them, of the originals, are huge. And so it's literally as tall as she is, the original. And so I chose a print of this alligator. And I would say, I don't know why it spoke to me. It just spoke to me. And for those people who know me or have even seen my house, they would be like, this would not be something that they would ever choose that I would choose. Because my house, they would have thought I would have chosen one of the magnolias or one of you have some of cotton, things of that nature. And so it's interesting that you just brought this up, because there is this kind of interesting reaction that people might have to this paintings, and then the reaction I had to this painting. And then to come to find out that alligator in, kind of the properties of alligator in spirituality is wisdom and knowledge, which was a huge part of the process of animal Reiki for me, at least personally. And it's a part of the connection of the tree of life as well. And that was a big part of my journey when we were writing it, was of wisdom and knowledge. And so, but just even the colors, I don't have orange in my house. I mean, this sits on my altar, but I don't have orange in my house. And, the colors of the eyes and the mouth are in a lot of different colors than orange. But what comes across is in totality is a kind of an orange color. So I just love that you just talked about that, because people would be also like, well, why did you choose an alligator? And the reaction that they might have. And I just love this painting.
Well, I remember at the time when I gave you those, y'all had just brought in the Tree of Life energy. And before y'all did that, I was like so disconnected with the animal kingdom. And it had taken years to wear that relationship away. And when y'all brought in that energy, I wanted you to have these, the ones you picked out as a thank you gift. And so that may have be why you ended up picking out an animal.
That's true. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Colleen picked a dragonfly that I don't know if you have that pulled up, Caroline, or not, but she picked a dragonfly that was colorful, something kind of very would
I'm
fit
looking at it because it's right here.
that would fit in her house, in her personality, things like that. And I just wanted to express that because it is very much what you just talked about, of like, might give you a warm feeling, it might give you a tingly feeling. To me, I feel very connected to it, but at the same time, like, you would never expect me to, if you knew me or saw my house or anything, you would never expect me to pick that one.
Well, the alligator you're talking about, he has become one of my most popular printed images.
Oh, really? This specific one, or that's alligator? Because you've probably made other.
No, that specific alligator that you picked out.
Oh, interesting.
And I actually, Colleen, since I got back from Hawaii with y'all, I've come out with a line of Louisiana Hawaiian shirts, and there's one of them that has the gator head all over it.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, to me, the alligator, when I look at that, it's the eyes.
Yeah.
The eyes are so kind, and the wisdom comes through. And it looks like the alligator is just in this kind of looking back out at us, and just with that kindness, and I can see the wisdom that, and you think of how many of them, how old they are. And even though we might be afraid of them, think of, or maybe you guys in Louisiana aren't, but I'm not quite
we're
sure.
very afraid of them.
Okay.
The other thing is how that series actually came about. It was like one February here. Every once in a while, we'll get these crazy ice storms that just come out of nowhere. And like, we're not used to that. People don't drive in that kind of weather. Animals, don't know what to do. And I was sitting in my house completely frozen in. And I started thinking, where are the alligators? What are they doing? With all this ice out there in the bayou, or do they go underwater? Do they make a nest? So that actually was the first alligator image I did. And I had seen that image a long time ago, and it had just stuck in my mind. And at that time, it was like, okay, it's time. Here's your next story. We're going to talk about the alligators. And in that series with the alligators was when I actually started incorporating in the reflection. You know how we talk about the reflection pool and going to the reflection pool. So the alligator is basically in the reflection pool, is the idea.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
He's
That's
reflecting on, oh my God, I've been here for so long. And all of a sudden I'm this old and I'm surrounded by ice. Where do I go? Are we going to go to Florida? Are we going to stay here in Louisiana? So that was all my thinking behind of all that. And then I never imagined that those images would end up being as popular as they are. At that time, when I was working on the alligators, they became like my best-selling series I think I'd ever done. And they were just like, I'd paint one and somebody would come by it, paint one and somebody would come by it. So as far as business goes, that's a good thing. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, my inner guidance is merging art, it's merging Reiki, and it's merging business. It's like all three veins were coming together, and it's like, oh, that's why I get these ideas. This is for like, Reiki brings in prosperity, Reiki brings in abundance, Reiki brings in ideas that are healing to people, and I never wrote this big artist statement about, how are the alligators going to make it, about the reflection pool. People just saw what they needed to see and got what they needed from it. And even though this is like a scary animal, I have several people that have like an 8-foot long alligator of mine hanging over their dining room table. To me, that's a big achievement, right?
Yeah, speak of give me chills. That's incredible.
But
Wow.
since I was sharing images, I want to go back and
Yeah,
share
let's do
all
it.
of the images where people may have considered it creepy. And then
Yeah.
it went from creepy, being the same much subject matter, went from being creepy to having like that more nostalgic, whimsical feel to it, which is what I prefer. But let me
And
share.
that the before and after Reiki?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So fascinating, Caroline.
Okay. So we're going to save that one. Now, here is the one of the ones that people considered on the creepy side.
I can
And
see that.
mhm,
More on the one on the top right. That's a
mhm.
little bit, yeah. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so this is actually my family, my ancestors, and they are outside having some kind of social gathering on our farm or a farm. And this is in 1937. So
Interesting.
my great uncle had a video camera, a uh, 8 millimeter camera at the time, which would have been a spool, like a spool of film. And he filmed this gathering, and my cousin shared it with me, and I just became obsessed with being able to see these old scenes of people interacting. They're moving, unlike a still photograph. There's motion. Not only is the camera moving, but the people are moving. So you really got to kind of see their personalities, what they were doing, how they were dressed, what was going on. And so for a long time, this is what I worked from, which is called film stills. I took the film, I digitized it, used a computer program to go in and stop the film, and then kind of make a screenshot or a still of the film. And this series right here, you're seeing this was 9 years ago.
Okay.
2015, which would have been 2 years before I received my Reiki attunements.
I
Now,
don't
jump.
know if I would have automatically looked at it and seen creepy the way that you're describing it. But when you say it, then it's like, oh yeah, there's a bit of that.
Well, it had gotten cleaned up a little bit. That was 3 years after I finished graduate school. And so I was kind of doing things in a little bit different vein. But I would say my 4.5 years in graduate school, everything did look pretty eerie, creepy, all of that stuff. Now, this image that I've pulled up right now is one of the ones, I don't know who this person is, but she wanted me to paint her. And she was absolutely adamant that she tell her story. I don't know her name. I don't know where she is. I don't know how old she is. But Robin was asking earlier about what is the colorful stuff underneath. And these were actually recipe cards that a friend's grandmother had given her, and she no longer wanted them, so she donated them to my art stash, I guess. And it was like right when I saw them and right when I saw her, I knew that this was part of the story about what this lady wanted to tell. And like I said, everybody can have their own interpretation of the story. I know what mine is, and it may not be that pleasant of a story, but I made it happy. I added the bright color.
Pleasant to me.
Can y'all see it?
Yes, it's great.
Okay. I added the bright colors. I made it look kind of cartoonish. And to me, you could look at this and say, this is funny. This is happy. But you could also look at it and like dig a little bit deeper and find a different story. So this was 2018, I think, when I did this one.
Caroline, is this original so large that those are the recipe cards are like an 8.5 by 11, and those are the actual recipe cards that are in there, or are they a bit smaller?
No, they're big. She's almost life size. The card's
Okay.
almost life size. So when I do these people paintings, they're almost life size or
Okay.
life size. That's kind of my rule of thumb. That's how I prefer to work with them. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
she's going on an adventure. And of course, I think the Just Married Shotgun Special, and in that age group, what a story in itself.
Yeah, with all the recipes too.
Mhm.
Like she doesn't know what she's getting into with all these recipes. Okay, but here I'm going to show you another one where you get to see the scale.
Mm.
Oh,
I like that one of yours.
Now, this is actually the same woman.
Oh,
Same
wow.
woman. Okay, we saw her on her wedding day before. This may be 5 or 6 years later. She's got 2 kids, but you can still see the recipes behind her. She's still surrounded by the recipes.
Still
But
have to cook
I
every day.
painted over them so you don't see them as much. You know, the recipes have kind of fallen into the background, but here she is. She's happy. Her kids are happy. She's got on her house shoes. She's got on her house dress. She's got her hair done. And then there's me standing to the right of the painting. And what do I have on?
oh, your shirt with her or
My
Oh,
dress.
skirt dress.
Dress.
Yes.
Dress.
So this was one of my very first printed ideas. These larger paintings, people love them. They'll talk about them all day long, but it's very hard to sell them.
Mm.
They're more expensive. They're big. People don't know who they are, but they love what they're seeing. It makes them happy. So that is why I started doing the thing with printing on the dresses, printing on the windbreakers. And then over to the far right, you can see another little girl baby in the picture. This is that same lady right there.
wow.
Isn't that neat?
Yes.
And so I found what I used, they're called Kodachrome slides, and I'm sure y'all are vaguely familiar with what those are. And I found them in a junk shop, probably about 2 miles from my house. And it was her whole wedding album, her whole, like her children's albums there. And of course, my first thought is, who would throw these away? But not everybody's like me, right?
And is this are these hanging in your home?
So this right here, this is actually hanging in one of my friend's art galleries.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And I love the shirt dress with it.
Yeah.
What an amazing just way to express your art, but also to it's just cool looking.
It is. And I know I talked a lot about my background as a cup painter. When you become that kind of boxed in with things taking a certain amount of time and you can only do so many and all of that, my thought was always not so much how can I make money with these images by printing them, but how can I spread them to the masses? How can I spread these images to the masses, to people who may not want to buy a big painting? And I know it makes them happy. Are they going to want to wear it? Do they want a pillow? Those were the kind of thoughts that were going through my mind, was like we talk about spreading Reiki exponentially. To me, this is my way of spreading Reiki and spreading joy exponentially, is by having these images in just like a more accessible way for the average person.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So then do you also imbue your art with Reiki?
Yes, I do. I'm going to bring up another one so y'all can see this.
Okay. Oh, well,
Interesting.
like you
That's
say,
my,
what a difference.
yeah. And look at the color.
Yeah.
Look at how I went from that black and white way of storytelling, of seeing kind of the darker side of things, to taking this just like normal everyday scene. None of these people know they're having their photograph taken, which is so cool to me. And look at how I just use color, and not just regular color, vibrant, vivid color. And we get such of a different interpretation of the scene because it looks like light. It looks like light shining on them rather than like dark and gloomy. But as you were saying, like imbuing these with Reiki, my whole studio, has Reiki all in it, and I activate my symbols before I go. So yes, I consider these imbued with Reiki, and then I think of all the healing potential that comes through having these people's lives preserved in like a positive way. Especially this kid right here. Like, look at him with the balloons.
Mm-hmm.
I just love that moment there. And this is a series I did the same time as I did the lady who just got married.
And the one that catches my eye in this one is, I don't know if he's a waiter, the one kind of standing up and heading off to the left. It looks like just such an ordinary day.
Well, let me tell you what it is. This is a school carnival. This is the school here, the brick school. This is like a tent over here. Maybe they're selling like funnel cakes or something. This guy has the balloons, and all of these people are just kind of sitting around watching the carnival. She's got flowers on. Some of these different ladies have corsages, so I don't really know what's going on there. Why is this man in a suit and tie at a school carnival? It's like all of these things are just so interesting to me. And like, you thought this guy was a waiter. I really like that.
Yeah, he looks like he's heading off to the kitchen to go bring them drinks.
What I like,
that out of the whole, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, out of this whole scene, this little boy was absolutely adamant about getting painted. And I don't know why. But when I found this whole stack of these Kodachrome slides at the junk shop, this is the one that jumped out at me first. And I was like, oh my God, what an undertaking. All these people, those windows, this and that. But he was just like, you're going to do it. You're going to follow through with it. I'm going to get my story told.
What's interesting about this painting in comparison to the other one is that the faces are still, some of them are more defined and some of them are less defined. And I would say with the other one, that was a little bit more of maybe what could be interpreted as creepy. I think probably from modern media, that when we don't see faces defined, it can mean ghostly or scary or creepy. And in this one, I know some of their faces are pretty well defined, and then a few of their faces aren't as well defined. That it's not what you would think of as creepy in this photo. Mm-hmm. Or in this painting, I'm sorry. It's not what you would think of as that, especially I think it's a woman in the center with a hat on. Hers is less defined than some of the others. And I noticed that in the ancestral one, that in the top right, Colleen, though, you were talking about the man that was there, his face was less defined in a similar fashion. But in this one, it definitely has a different energy behind it.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's the use of color. I really do.
Yeah, I could see that. If you imagine this in black and white, it would have maybe a different feeling.
So for any of you listening to the podcast, this is all the visual part you can see in our YouTube channel, so you can go back and look at it. And you can also go to Caroline's website and see her artwork there too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Caroline, I don't know if we're in a place for it, but maybe talking about your newest series, because you've talked about it on your Facebook, and like I had mentioned earlier, then the continual color development, and because you've also talked with us about it in class. The other thing that you've talked about with us in class is, because we do so many clair senses development in the next step classes. You've talked about that over the years, and how that kind of expresses for you also. I know those are kind of two separate things, but also connected. So
Yeah, well, this is another time where I may want to use some images just because it helps.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go back to 2017 was when I got my Reiki attunements. I believe this was late 2017, maybe the summer, or it could have been 2018. So look at the dramatic change between, well, I didn't show any of the magnolias before, but the magnolias were pretty muted. The magnolias still had a lot of that, not vibrant color, more traditional grays, all of that. And then, yeah, this is 2018 because that's how I title my images. So 2018, Reiki comes through. I was doing this like in spite of what was selling. So this was like a big shift for me. I was finally going to paint what I wanted, use the colors what I wanted, be expressive. But at the same time, maybe I'm working with a gallery or somebody selling things for me, and they specifically tell me, don't send us anything that has colors in it. So depressing, like so depressing. So this painting in particular just kind of sat back in the corner of my studio. It's still back there for a long time. I'm kind of embarrassed that I did this. What was I thinking? Putting a heart in the middle here. Everybody probably thought that was really silly.
Are these three separate canvases?
Yes. So this
Okay.
painting is actually 9 feet wide.
Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. So each of the canvases is 3 feet wide, 4 feet tall.
Wow.
So I take on this painting, not even caring whether it's going to sell, not caring anything about it. And here it is 6 years later. And this is the most popular pattern that's being printed on my windbreakers right now. It's called zinnias. And people just love it. So the t-shirt dresses have zinnias, the windbreakers have zinnias. People just love these zinnias because they tell me it makes them happy.
I would think also pillows would be great.
The pillows go really well. I mean, I can just see endless potential with different things printed with a fabric that makes people happy.
That's one of my favorite flowers to put in my garden is zinnias. I have them ready to be planted, actually, because they're happy.
Yeah, here's another one I did that summer. To me, this is just beyond happy.
Yeah.
I mean, so happy, so vibrant, so much life. And to me, this painting actually symbolizes the holy fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't really know how to describe that because, I mean, the flames are in there somewhere, but not really. It's just the energy of the holy fire. Because I think that was 2018 was when I took my holy fire classes with William in Michigan. And here I come home painting colorful zinnias, colorful sunflowers. And this one again has become one of my most popular printed images. And I know why, because it makes people happy.
And has holy fire energy.
Yeah, those are two good examples. Now the colors like you're talking about that I'm working on right now is something more like this. I think this is the one.
I love this.
Yes, they're so happy.
Yeah, the greens and blues in this, especially in those greens, they're just, it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah, and I don't know if y'all can see, you can actually tell how wet the paint. So I use oil paint. You can see the gloss from the paint like in the middle and the bottom because I'm still working on this one. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's that kind of glare that you see on the bottom.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and I brought this one up because I want you to see, since I've had the World Peace upgrade, there's been less and less duality in my paintings. They're moving more towards this kind of unification, feeling of unconditional love, unconditional peace, versus, let's see, a flamingo I did 4 years ago.
Yeah, for those that are listening, she's showing flamingos. Oh,
So
very
this is a
different.
flamingo I did 4 years ago. I actually called this painting Flamingo Oasis at the time because he's like on the water here.
I love
There's,
him,
yeah, there's the desert behind him there. The
but it's
sky.
definitely different.
Yeah. Well, there's duality in here because look at this other flamingo. He's headed in the other direction. He's headed off in the desert. This guy is all by himself versus the flamingo I just showed you that I did this year where they've come together. And there's not the duality that I intended in this one, where this guy is like over here and separate, and then this guy is like large and in charge in the middle.
Can you go back to the new one that you just did? And when you did this one, did you know that it was representing the duality?
Not at all. I called it Flamingo Oasis.
Oh, right.
But see, I think I'm going to title this one Flamingos Oasis because they're sharing
Yeah.
it together instead of one of them leaving and going off and being angry or whatever. These two guys are together. They're happy with where they live. They're happy with the reflection pool. All of that.
Toward the heart, of course, the heart they make.
Yes, of course that.
Yeah.
And some more of those would be, well, I did this one since I got the World Peace Energy. This is one of my all-time favorite paintings.
Oh, Caroline, I love
Aren't
this.
they sweet? They just look so happy to me.
For
Can you
those that are
describe it?
they're doves.
Yeah, describe it for those that are listening.
Yeah, sure. So in this one, we've got a pair of doves, and they're either feeding each other or they're kissing. And the male dove, I'm assuming that's the male dove, has his wings like outstretched, and the female dove is kind of like resting her head on his shoulder. And, she has her wings closed. She's in a peaceful place. Um, so I have quite a relationship with the doves that live around my house, and this is what brought it about a lot because they are constantly singing to me, whether I'm inside, outside, whether I'm in any room in my house, in my bed and at night, in the morning, in my computer room, I always hear them. And there was actually a couple of them that lived on my front porch at the time I was doing this painting. And the longer that the doves have stayed with me, the more I understand what they're saying, and the more they're like, okay, go paint this, go live this. This is the new life. This is the peace that like Usui Sensei is talking about. It's there, it's accessible. The animals are accessing it. We can access it. There can be heaven on earth is kind of like what they're saying. And that's a big painting. That one's 4 feet high, 4 feet wide, 48 by 48. It is hanging in my guest room right now.
I
That's
love this one.
Let's see.
Show the hummingbirds from this latest series.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So this is a painting I'm doing for a very special client. And he actually gave me the idea. And this is about what it's going to look like finished. Yes, and the hummingbirds, I've never painted a hummingbird before. I always thought they were too little. And they are a little small for me in this painting, but I just love how there's so many of them together and they're with the flowers.
Yeah. And then again, you have the greens and the blue and then the colors on the forefront as well. Same with the flamingos. So, but yeah, there's just some of those colors that, are, it's like they just speak. I mean, yes, visually they look like colors that you see more in that kind of dream journey state, but then it's more than that. It's like there's a feeling behind the colors with it. And the same with the flamingos too. They are, it's like the one that you showed from before, those, even though that color was really vibrant, there's a different depth of color here. And I mean that almost in like I don't want to say 3D because the other one was 3D, but this is like almost a 5D way. There's just a feeling behind them.
Yes, so it is. I'm glad you brought that up, Robin, because it is very important to me that there's some sense of motion in my paintings.
Yeah.
You know how I told you I was so fascinated with the idea of creating a three-dimensional world in a two-dimensional,
Yeah.
on a two-dimensional plane? Well, at some point I moved away from that. I'm like, well, not only do I want it to be 3D, I want 4D and 5D.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
You
want
can
it to
see
look
that.
like these people are moving. I want there to seem like there's life in this image. And
Yeah. And these last two seem like they encapsulate also that exploration of the kind of 12 heavens in the paintings, I guess is what I'm also trying to say, where all of them capture that movement, that life. This one captures the unseen, I guess, in that exploration that we do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, the most liberating thing about this painting, about the flamingo you saw and the others I'm working on now, I am using the colors I want without worrying about, is anybody going to buy this? Am I going to take this to a gallery and they say, we don't want any colors. We just want neutral paintings. We want this. Like, I'm over that. I'm retired. I'm going to do what I want. And I know that if Reiki is guiding me to do this, if I feel inspired, I know where it's coming from. And that doesn't mean that these people that want gray paintings and black and white paintings and all that are bad. They're just not my customers. And, I'm at a point now where it's like, I can't please everybody. That's not my point. If there's people out there that want happiness, I've got it. If there's people out there that want creepy, well, I kind of moved away from that.
Well, authentic self.
Yes, exactly.
What Reiki does is it continually unveils our more and more of authentic self, which is what is speaking through in your paintings. Is this part of the new series as well?
Mm-hmm. This is another one of the new ones I'm doing with the doves, and using color and making things look cartoony, just like going back to my roots.
Yeah. Is this one done?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
These are going to have to dry while I'm in France, and then I can come back and work on them more.
Really neat.
Well, I also, several times you've mentioned loving to be in altered states, loving to be in that kind of dreamlike state, and how Reiki enhances that. And I think one of the things that you mentioned is that you used to have a concern that might make you crazy, or have the label of being crazy.
Or spacey. People have always called me spacey, and I'm like, no, I'm not spacey. Don't call me spacey. Like, I would do everything in the world to try to pay attention and not be spacey. It's like, God, think of what I was missing out on. All that information that comes in when I'm actually spacey. Yeah. I know y'all get it.
We do.
No, I mean, that people started calling me spacey once I got into painting. And then my family became concerned about me. They were wondering why I was painting all the time, trying to control me to not paint, which that was a very loving thing on their part. But, this is who I am. I'm spacey. I'm dreamy. I like peace around me, all of those things.
And how has Reiki then enhanced that and normalized it for you, empowered you in your natural way of being?
Well, I think we can go back to what Usui Sensei was going for. That's that state of inner perfect peace, unwavering peace. I had glimpses of that, when I was working on my art or in there painting my cups. I'd have like little glimpses of that peace, but I'd go out into the outside world and have these concerns that, well, I'm using too much color. People will think I'm spacey. People will think I'm crazy. And then that was like kind of a battle, like a mental battle. The more I practice Reiki, the more classes I take, the more journeys I do. Like I journey constantly. And the more I do that, it's like, no, there's no way I can go back to the way I was before. It's kind of like the way I hope y'all have peaceful homes. My home is very peaceful. I've created it this way. It's beauty. I mean, I have beauty all around me. I have my animal here, you know. So I always wanted that way I felt at home to like carry me around everywhere because I kind of created a sanctuary here. And that is what Reiki has helped me to do is carry that unwavering sense of peace, even in like very difficult situations. And that doesn't mean I don't have like physical sensations. The one I've been having lately is like I'll kind of have a little bit of a muscle spasm behind my heart, and then one side of my throat will start tickling, and it's like almost like feels like I'm going to choke. Well, if I do Reiki on that and I breathe and I calm down, my body settles down a little bit. So I'm not saying I'll walk around and I'm not in a human body and I'm not in human consciousness. I'm still having responses to unpleasant situations, tense situations, those kinds of things. But, like we talk about using our Reiki as a life management tool, I feel like I access that, in all parts of my life, and that it is what guides me with business decisions. It's what guides me with relationship decisions. And the number one thing is, gosh, I'm not counting on an outside authority to validate any of that for me. If I love my painting, I love my painting. Just because it's not accepted into a museum show, just because a gallery doesn't want to sell it, just because it's not printed in a hospital, doesn't mean it doesn't have its place. And before, something like that would have like sent me into a tailspin of doing great paintings, being depressed, all of those things. So those are the ways that Reiki has really helped to uncover my authentic truth, my authentic message, and the way I communicate it to people.
Fantastic.
So I have to ask you about your upcoming trip to France. And so can you just talk a little bit about that? Because it's a tour through France and Mary Magdalene.
Yes, so I don't know as much about it as I could because I want to be very surprised. But my friend that actually introduced me to my first Reiki teacher was the one that convinced me to go. She went last year. She enjoyed it so much. She had such a profound healing experience through meditating in the caves, through being in the mountains, and being led to these very sacred spots that she said she wanted to go back again. And I told her I wanted to come with her. There was no doubt in my mind that this was the next trip I was going to do, and I was just going to trust and go along with it. So we are going to be spending 3 weeks in a town called Keon. And Keon is about 2 hours north of the ocean or the sea and 2 hours north of Spain. So we're going to be in the southern part of France, and we basically have an agenda every day with our leader, we call him our leader because he's been there for 3 months already. He does this tour every year. He knows the good places to eat. He knows the right places to go. And so we basically have different sites we're going to go see every day, plus have a spa day, plus have fun time, all of those things. And it's a group of, including the leader, there'll be 7 of us, 6 of us staying in one house, and we're all going to be sharing, transportation. So it's turned out to be a very affordable trip. And, when I get back, I'll let y'all know my
I can't
reviews
wait
of
to
it.
hear it. Well, I ask because it's a bucket list of Robin and mine to go and, to be in that part of France and, the all of the history of Mary Magdalene there. And so,
Yeah, so I must say I didn't know much about her. I knew I had heard of the name before, but I didn't know much about her. So I watched a couple of documentaries and they were from completely different perspectives. So I'm trying to really keep an open mind and, just find out why I've been guided to take this trip and all of that stuff.
and to see how it'll influence your art when you get back. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that'll be another whole thing of telling those stories.
Yeah, well, since you bring that up, I'd like to say a little bit about how the trip to Japan influenced my art.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
it was last April that I went with Colleen. Well, I went and met Colleen and William on Mount Karama, and I was supposed to take 2 classes there. I ended up taking one. And before I went, I was really guided to start looking at the landscape again and kind of look at it through the lens of Japanese printmaking, Japanese painting, which I've always loved. And before I left, I was already kind of given a symbol, which was cypress trees, which we have here, and they grow in the water. There's actually one of them behind me. You can see how it's tall, like you'd see a Japanese print or Japanese painting. You know how they do everything's kind of like tall and like that. So I started doing those before I left. And that idea, I give the credit to Reiki for giving me that idea. Well, all of a sudden, before I leave, these paintings become even more popular than my alligators. And I'm just selling them like one after the other. And I was like, okay, that's Reiki telling me something. And then when we got up on the mountain and was spending time on the mountain, I kept hearing, and when I say hear, I don't hear a voice. It's more like a knowing with me or a really repetitive thought. There's different ways that Reiki will get my attention. And it kept telling me that I was retired. You're retired. It's time to retire. I was like, what does that mean? I'm 40. Oh, at the time then I was 43. I was like, I can't really retire right now. But that seed kept getting planted in my mind. And when I got back, I realized there were multi levels of what Reiki was telling me I was retiring from. Well, I was retiring from one phase in my career where I was like a traveling painting salesman, loading up paintings, driving paintings around, drive to Dallas with paintings, drive to Arkansas, drive to Alabama. It gets old fast. And I finally had that burden lifted from me. You don't have to do it anymore. We have another idea. And that's when the whole thing about really getting the printed business going, it was like, yes, you can do this. All these paintings you've done, like I've had over almost 600 paintings photographed. I have all these images of all these paintings I've done. Some of them I've sold, some of them are in my studio, but they were telling me I was going to retire by exponentially spreading Reiki by printing these paintings, may go in a museum, may go in a hospital, may go in a bank. I have some that are in a labor and delivery clinic. I mean, how beautiful is that? They did the magnolias with them blooming everywhere. Like, how many women are going to come in there, or the healthcare providers are going to walk by my painting and smile on a bad day, or it's going to make the lady who's about to have a baby like a little bit more relaxed. My paintings, I love having them in the waiting rooms of the hospitals and the doctor's offices. There's a new credit union in town that ordered 10 of my paintings with different wildlife and different landscapes and stuff, places where people need to relax. They're thinking about money, they're thinking about health problems. So this is, to me, now I'm understanding a little bit more about what Reiki was telling me about it's time to retire. We have to look at this whole situation and realize what is bringing me the most joy, and then what also has the potential to bring as many people as possible joy, whether they can afford a $10,000 painting, a $5,000 painting, or they just want a pillow on their couch that makes them smile, or a pillow on their bed, or a note card. They want to write a note card on my new note cards, or a tea towel where it's just hanging in their kitchen or something like that. So I think of myself as an entrepreneur as much as I do an artist. So I'm just so grateful for Reiki as a guide on my entrepreneurial journey, because I am not naturally a risk taker, but I know that when Reiki is there to support my risk, it's not like it was before when I was just doing everything like out of fear or out of desperation. I'm sure y'all understand that.
Yeah, scarcity mentality versus abundance mentality. It's a big switch. And it can be a process, years-long process.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a traveling fiber artist for 15 years. So, and that's also Reiki came in and said, and I don't know that I ever heard it as you're going to retire, but never knowing that I was going to do something different. And that I know exactly what you mean, because that's a lot of work. Robin grew up with that also. That was part of her childhood, traveling around with
Part
me.
of my personal journey too. And same thing.
Personal.
I just said yes. I'm like, well, I don't know where this is leading me, but yes.
So she did the same thing.
I want to clarify how the difference between my Reiki education and my art education, because my art education would never, ever have taught me anything about selling printed art. Now, if you did printmaking and painting were two different things. And printmaking was still a very limited edition thing. That's how they kind of teach you in art school. Okay, everything is a limited edition. You need to know ahead of time, I'm only going to print 10 of these. Or if you're a photographer, you're going to do a limited edition. They're only going to be 50, like that. But as a painter, they don't, or I didn't have an experience where my entrepreneurial spirit was encouraged. It was more like, okay, if you're going to have this degree, you realize the only thing you can do is teach people what we just taught you. And that was not authentic to me at all. And I was too embarrassed to tell my professors if I sold a painting, if I did this or that. That was just not something I talked about. So I did graduate with a lot of fear. I did graduate with a very limited idea of what I was going to be able to do with my life. And that was depressing because I wasn't getting to use my gifts and talents, things that I've actually accessed in my DNA that came from my ancestors, things that they learned through business, challenges that they have. So I feel like tapping into all of that is something that Reiki has helped me with, and my Reiki education has helped me with in ways that staying in art school forever wouldn't have done in the same way. So I would have never, when I graduated from graduate school 12 years ago, I never, ever would have imagined that I would be having my printed shop, that I would be having fun, that I would be being told that I was going to retire, like all of these things. So
Traveling to France on a Mary Magdalene tour.
yeah, getting to go to Japan,
Yeah.
like getting to do
And
all of
Hawaii. You came
getting
to
to go
Hawaii
in
with
one
us.
year, Hawaii and Japan in 1 year. I mean, how awesome is that? And so that's what I'm saying about how my life has become very magical. I absolutely would not have looked at it through that lens before I started having the support of Reiki. I would have looked at it through scarcity mentality, like you're saying, looking at it through doing jobs I don't want to do, but that's what I'm supposed to do, or that's what's going to look good for me, And part of me retiring was absolutely retiring from showing artwork. That had just drained the life out of me. And that's not me. And I can finally say it, and I can finally say, hey, that's not what's going to support me the rest of my life. That is very, very not sustainable for my personality. And I'm glad I was able to accept that at a young age instead of becoming like a burnt out, mentally ill person not doing what they want to do.
Oh, I love that so much. So also then with your Reiki practice, are you teaching? Are you doing sessions?
Yes, so I do sessions. All my sessions are at a distance. That's actually the way that y'all have trained me and that I prefer using journeying with Reiki. Now, I can do a traditional session, if I feel guided to do that, but I prefer the distance sessions now. I've started a monthly Reiki share in my community this year, which is very important to me. Feel very guided to help build up the Reiki community here and help people foster their talents and discover their talents that, they may have hidden before for different reasons, like I did. I do have a Reiki class scheduled for, it's the last 2 weekends in June. And it's just in the afternoon. That's how it ends up taking up 3 days because I'm renting Blue Sky Yoga is where I'm going to be holding the class in the afternoons. And if anybody's interested, they can do registration through Blue Sky Yoga in Monroe.
And that's Monroe, Louisiana.
Monroe, Louisiana, in
And
Northeast.
in person?
Mhm.
Nice.
Mhm.
And then if they want to have a Reiki session from you, how do they go about that?
All my contact information is on my website. And people can contact me about Reiki through there. They can also contact me about buying original art. And they can also contact me there if they need any guidance in ordering printed art for their home or their business. And if there's any businesses out there that are interested in featuring my art in their business, I do offer a bulk discount when people place their orders directly through me. So,
Well, and your website is very easy to follow.
okay,
So
good.
it's easy to navigate. It's easy to find what you're looking for. So, and the print shop as well as the original art. It's for me, I find it very easy to use.
Yeah, and if anybody is in my region, I just recently, in the past 2 months, opened a brick and mortar booth. I will call it my booth, my shop. It is within an art market. People can go in there and try on, my windbreakers, see what size they need, see which print they like. There's also other clothing, and all the things that you see listed on my website under print shop. There should be some kind of sample of that for them to touch and feel and try on if they like. And that is located in Monroe, Louisiana, on Tower Drive, and it's in a shopping center called the Shops on Tower. And it's located next to a restaurant called Delta Biscuit, which is really easy to find. And the art market where my printed store is called the trove, like a treasure chest, the trove.
Oh, I love that. Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, that's been big in the last 2 months. And just yesterday, I got a purchase order for a licensing agreement with a new hotel in New Orleans.
Oh, yay.
Oh, yeah, I know I told y'all that back in December, and I've been waiting 6 months to hear from them. I thought I was outbid. They had found somebody else, and then they placed their order right before I go to France.
Nice.
And then look, it's so weird. Then the next day I come and I'm on the podcast with y'all to talk about it. So this is how it's spreading exponentially for me, which I know that this is my life purpose and I gladly accept it. And I have a magical life.
And you look and sound and feel as happy as you're describing the light in your paintings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're really even glowing. I love it. Well, she is Caroline Youngblood, and it's carolineyoungblood.com, and on all the different social media things too that you can find her. Definitely go check out her website. For those of you that are listening, we did display quite a bit of her work visually, and will be on our YouTube channel, so you can see the information there. So, and actually watch and see the visual part of our discussion. And Robin and I, of course, are reikilifestyle.com, and you can find everything about us there.
And I would love to come back when I finish my oasis of peace and love, because as I'm doing this interview right now, I'm just getting it started. And I know that this trip to France is going to have a profound effect on that. So I'd love to talk about that some other time.
Definitely, we will have you back when you're ready with it. Well, thank you to all of our listeners, and what just a fun and great conversation, Caroline. Thank you so much. And we've known you now for quite a long time and gotten to spend quite a bit of time with you, and just so excited for you and how Reiki has really just transformed and guided your decisions, and from your art to your entrepreneurship and just your personal life. So,
well, I'll have one request. I really hope that y'all keep these monthly classes going in some way, or you don't mind me taking the 12 heavens indefinitely with you. I'll be the one student in the back. Oh, she's repeated 10 times.
Well, we think the same thing with the 12 heavens class, because I think we can explore them. And for those of you that may not know what we're talking about, Robin and I teach monthly year-long classes. So each course is 1 year long, and the one particular one we're talking about is the Explore the 12 Heavens of Consciousness and Meet Your Spirit Guides class. And so this is the second year, well, 2.5 years, because we taught it also once in a 6-month course. But what is coming through is so fascinating and helpful. I mean, that's the other piece, is that not only is it interesting and fascinating, but the empowerment that it's bringing people is extraordinary. And for us, the exploration, I think we will have exploration, like you say, just, forever. It's unlimited.
Yeah.
And then the next step classes that you took, the 3-year courses, and yes, it does speak to us that how is this going to continue for the people who have completed all 4 years? So
The other request I would have is that at some point somebody does a destination animal Reiki class.
Yeah.
Like how I'm like going to Hawaii, going to Japan. I mean, I would even come up to Portland, But I loved taking the animal Reiki with y'all. Both of those classes were really, and I want to take them again is the thing, but I want to take them in a different way, like in a zoo or in a horse stable, or, you'll have the llamas and all of that.
It's definitely on the list, Caroline.
Yes.
Yeah, we have been talking about it. So some of our personal life things going on that we're not quite ready to schedule it yet, but it is on the list to schedule. So of course you would be one of the first to find out. So, and for anyone listening, we would definitely post it and make it well known, because we also want to do that.
Mhm.
So.
All right.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much,
you, everybody.
everyone.
And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.